Okay, good morning, everyone. And we start with the class. At any point of time, if you want to say something, contribute, criticize, just unmute yourselves and don't just write in the chat box. Okay, a quick recap of what we were doing yesterday. Yesterday, we started with the diffusion process, and it is important to understand the diffusion process because we may have a new product, we may have been great in innovation, and finally we think we have the product. However, we are here not just to make the product, develop the product, but also to market the product, and therefore it's important that the product should also reach the customer. And therefore, it's important to understand diffusion process because this is the process by which acceptance of an innovation is spread by communication to members of a social system over a period of time. And yesterday, we discussed the 4 elements. I just mentioned the 4 elements, which is the innovation, channels of communication, social system, and time. Yesterday, we discussed innovation, channels of communication, and the social system, and we left time to be discussed today. If you have any concerns or queries, or if there's anything which you haven't understood yesterday, just unmute yourself and let me know. Otherwise, I'll start with the 4th element, which is the time. Okay, I'll start with the 4th element, which is the time. When we are talking about time, why I just left a separate class to understand time, because this might take time and it's extremely important to understand. समय जो किसी के लिए नहीं रुकता and it moves on, and it's such an important thing, and if we waste it, we never ever get it back. And same is true for business, same is true for marketing. So when I'm talking about time, we say we look at time from 3 different things: purchase time, adopter categories, and rate of adoption. And what does it mean? So let us first understand the first one, which is purchase time. What do we understand by purchase time? Purchase time is the time from which the consumer gets aware of the product till the time the consumer buys the product. And this journey, this time period is extremely important for us because marketing is meeting the needs of the customer profitably, and that can only happen if the customer buys the product. We are not just here to create awareness. We are not just here to manufacture new products. We are not just here to create wonderful advertisements. We are here to ensure that we are meeting the need of the customer so that the customer buys the product. And therefore, this time, the time from which the customer becomes aware of the product till the time the customer buys the product is extremely important for us. It is also important for us because longer this period of time, longer your investment is stuck. You are not getting any revenue. And therefore, for the benefit of business, for the benefit of marketing people, yes, it makes sense that shorter the purchase time, the better it is for us. And ideally, we would just like that the customer becomes aware and goes and buys it. But that's not how things happen. And that's where perception, learning, motivation all plays such an important part, because you have to ensure that the customer develops the right perception about the product, brand, or service. You have to ensure that the customer is motivated to buy the product, brand, and service so that this time period is reduced. It's reduced to the best possible thing. Yes, there are some products. So for example, when we are talking about if you tomorrow want to take admission in some university for your further higher education, there is a purchase time. The time from which you become aware of that university till the time you apply and finally you take admission. This purchase time is so important for a marketing person, because the longer it is, the longer my product is sitting in the inventory, the longer it is, the longer there is no revenue, the longer it is, the more are the chances of it becoming obsolete. And therefore, while innovation is important, understanding the society is important, the communication is important. At the end of it, we are doing all this so that the purchase time reduces. My next thing is adopt a category. And what do I mean by adopt a category? So is it that when a product comes in the market, then everybody starts buying it? No. For example, when a film is released, and these days because of COVID, the films are only released on OTTs and not really in the cinema halls, it's not that everybody goes and watches it. No, there are people like me who most probably are the last one to watch it when somebody says, yeah, that's worth watching. It's really good. So who are the people? So this is important because to understand whom should I target? How should my communication go? And we say that there are 5 categories of people. The first one, innovators. These are the people who are the first to buy. These are the people who are ready to take a risk. These are the people who like being the first to try something and form an opinion about it. These are the people who are important for us in the introduction phase because their perceived risk is very, very less, and therefore it's far easier to convince them. And therefore, look at the innovators. Imagine the innovator. He's a person whose perceived risk is less. He's a person who's ready to take risk. He's a person who likes trying new things. He's a person who wants to form opinion, who wants to be the first to the person to say, you know what, yes, I have tried this. You know what, I have seen this film. You know what, I have been to this restaurant. Now, I hope you do understand that you may be an innovator for one product does not mean that you're innovator for all the products. So I may be a laggard for the films. However, I may be an innovator when it comes to reading books. Right? So you have to understand that innovators of one particular product does not mean that they're innovators for everything. The second category of people who then step in are the early adopters. Who are these? So they are observing the innovators, and when they get a good feedback, they get good opinions, they are also now ready to try this product, and we call them early adopters. The early adopters are then followed by early majority, then late majority, and last are the laggards, if all they ever buy the product. At this point of time, maybe as a student, I would be interested to understand, so is it like, how do we divide? So there are 5 categories, and is it 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%? No, that's where the next slide becomes so important. The innovators are only 2.5%. And can you see, I mean, the early adopters are 13.5%, the majority is 68%, and the laggards are 16%. So go back, the first one, this is the innovators. These are only 2.5%, but so important because these are the people who will set the ground for the early adopters, and the other people. The early adopters are watching them. If they give a bad review, then early adopters do not buy it. And obviously, if the early adopters do not buy it, forget about the majority. I don't know how many of you, can you actually also see the link with the PLC or the product life cycle? It's so interesting. I mean, it's just, everything is coming together now. Doesn't this also look like that product life cycle? What does it mean? Now do you understand why I told you that in the introduction phase, the profit is hardly there? Why? Because only so many people are using it. But these people are extremely important because they are showing the way to the other people. The other people are watching them. It's just like what happened with the vaccine in India. When the first group of people, the health workers, the medicals were taking the vaccine, the world was watching them. We were watching them. Oh, okay. So it's safe, it's okay, the perceived risk is not so much, I can also go ahead and take it, right? Even when it opened for other categories. So for example, when it opened for people above 60 years or people above 45 years, even among those, they were watching their peers. Acha, tumne le liya? Oh, you're fine. Okay, fine. Now I will also go ahead and take it. So please understand that this is somewhere so linked to the product life cycle. Can you see that early majority and late majority, they come somewhere in the maturity phase? They come when the product has a lot of features and extensions, when the product has been in the market for very, very long. And look at this, the laggards somewhere come in the decline phase. And therefore, these categories are so, and that's why your marketing strategy, that's why your communication strategy, your promotion strategy completely changes. Because for innovators, you would be talking about being the first one. For innovators, you would be talking about how it's a discovery, it's an innovation. On the other hand, for majority people, you would be talking about that how the world has adopted it, and therefore it is so safe to adopt, and how the different features now exist, right? It's important to therefore understand not just the purchase time, but also understand the adopter categories, because your promotion strategy completely changes. The product, which is an innovation for the innovators, by the time it reaches the late majority, it is no longer an innovation. Rather, it most probably now needs an innovation. Otherwise, it will move on to the decline phase. While this is important, it's finally also the third thing which is important, which is rate of adoption. Now, what do I mean by rate of adoption? Rate of adoption means that how soon do the masses adopt the product? How does it matter to me? I mean, which means that I'm talking about how soon the product reaches these early majority and late majority, not reaches, how soon is it, do they start using the product? Why is it important for us? Again, for the same reason that if my product only gets stuck over here, then I only get so many consumers, right? I need to understand that how soon does it reach here, or how late does it reach here? Because this again will affect my marketing strategy. Now, how will it affect? Let me show you a very interesting website that I found, and I read something over there. And it is Harshit, you are late today. Is Harshit there? Harshit? You're late today.
Ma'am, did you say to me?
Yeah, you just joined, no?
Ma'am, I sent my request for around 10 minutes. I was waiting.
Yeah, so you know I don't, and
Yeah.
even now I've allowed because you're Harshit. Okay, so
Yes,
coming back, I found this really, really interesting website, and look at this, it says, how long did it take to reach 50 million users? A telephone took 75 years to reach 50 million users. A radio took 38 years. A television took 13 years. Internet, 4 years. Facebook, 19 months. YouTube, 10 months. Twitter, 9 months. Angry Birds, 35 days. And Pokemon Go, only 19 days. Can you see how it has been so different for different products to reach the 50 million users? The adoption rate. My next question as a student would be, hey, so how does it matter? I mean, how does it matter whether it is 75 years or 19 days or 35 days, except that we make a beautiful slide? How does it matter? Hey, I mean, don't you understand that the faster is the rate of adoption, the more difficult life is for you and me, the marketing person? Because that means that it is very soon, the PLC, or the product life cycle, has become so much shortened. What does it mean? We do not have time to breathe anymore, because the product that is new today is old tomorrow. Pokemon Go, which was new today, is old after 19 days, and the consumer is waiting for an innovation. Because the only constant thing in the world is change, and if you do not change, if you do not innovate, your consumer will get bored. After 19 days, the consumer will say, hey, yeah, this is so boring. And therefore, you don't have time to breathe. You have to be on your toes. You need to understand. Never before did we need to understand the consumer so well as we have to do now. Never before did the marketing people need to be in touch with the needs of the consumer so much as we need to be now, because the consumer's perceived risk is decreasing every day. The consumer is ready to take risk, and which means that the rate of adoption is decreasing, which means that the product which is new today is becoming old tomorrow and obsolete day after tomorrow. And if you don't innovate, then on the fourth day, you're dead. Telephone had a great time. It took 75 years. They had so much time to breathe, to relax, because the people were still they were still in awe of it. They were still taking their time to adopt it. It was taking its time. However, look at Facebook. Don't you see it now? I mean, Facebook so frequently keeps coming up with something new. And it's not every time some major innovation or anything, but something new, because they need to. Because you and I, we get so bored so soon. And we need something new. Which means that life for a marketing person was never as tough before as it is today. Because this rate of adoption is telling us, and look at all the electronic products, look at your phones. I mean, you buy a phone this year, and after a year or after 2 years, you're again standing in front of your parents and saying, you know what, I want a new one. And you're like, really? But you just bought it. No, it's old. It doesn't have some memory, or the camera is old, some stupid nonsense, whatever. And that's why these phone companies, they keep coming up with new models. I mean, something or the other is changing in it, because the rate of adoption is so fast now. And because it is so fast now, to be in the race, to be in business, to be with the customer, you need to innovate. Because if you don't, as I said today, then you're new today, you're old tomorrow, and you're obsolete day after tomorrow. And if you don't do anything, you become a dinosaur on the fifth day, right? So time. The time factor is so important, not just in terms of purchase time. That is the time taken by the consumer from the time he becomes aware to the time he purchases, but in terms of adopter categories as to who are the people who are using the product when, because all this translates into rate of adoption, right? And combine together everything, which is innovation, channels of communication, social system, and time. And most probably, we have a formula to ensure that there's a diffusion of our product. If you do your homework well, as I always say, the probability of your product being accepted by your target segment increases. If you don't, you keep listening and reading theory. Yes, at this point of time, let me stop, because this topic needs more discussion. This topic needs more understanding. And therefore, let me stop at this stage with my topic so that we can talk further.